This episode, it could have been great. Summarize on how that it foreshadows of what the future of the show ended up becoming. And to tell you the truth, with this being part of Peridot's arc, I'm gonna be really real with you that they probably wanted this episode to be a lot more emotional if you ever have the chances of binge watching this show a second time. This is also the episode where we get to see the information or witness the information involving the diamonds themselves, with one of them making their debut in the following episode. And to tell you the truth, I really felt like that whenever this episode tries a lot more in comparison to the last episodes, it really shows that we're getting more of a glimpse of the diamonds themselves and the galaxy outside of Earth. It could have been great is similar to When It Rains when it comes to the first half being wholesome, while the second half is, well, everything is taken by expedition with the information itself, but it's a lot more bigger than When It Rains. Because I've always got the impression that what the Crystal Gems fought for really shows that it was difficult for them to actually move forward of what ends up happening in Season 5. Granted, Peridot wasn't aware that Rose was Pink Diamond all along, but then again, every single character aside from Pearl was aware that Rose wasn't what they seemed. The song Peace and Love on the Planet Earth being sung in the first half of the episode, which was sung by Steven and Peridot, really shows that the development is really there in Peridot. And this was before the infamous episode, but not really infamous for the wrong reasons, because we all know that following episode is, well, everything changes, and it really ended off Season 2 on a high note. Granted, there was another episode, but at the same time, that episode didn't ruin the credibility of the following episode. Every time I think about this song, it really shows that everything has been building up to the final episodes. And with the other Crystal Gems singing, really makes this song a lot more memorable when it comes to these characters getting used with each other, but at the same time, the second half of the episode really changes for the worse. The final objective on protecting Earth from the cluster is that they need to find the whereabouts of the cluster, so they go to the moon thanks to Lion in order to get that objective to protect the Earth. And to tell you the truth, with this being played of the information involving the diamonds themselves is really what's kicking off of what the finale really is going to exhalate. Believe me, I can tell for a fact that watching this episode for the first time, all the while rewatching the first and last episode of Season 2, well, mainly the first episode of Season 1 and the last episode of Season 2, really informs on how that they really wanted the whole diamond reveal to be a lot more important, and how that rewatching the episodes to understand the purpose on the development really shows that 2016 was literally a year where Steven Universe just isn't for me at the time, just wasn't for me. And thinking about these episodes and of how that they're developing these characters, I can tell that this episode involving the second half is indicating that they're really attempting to showcase on the characters not realizing what's really going on while the other character knows otherwise. And that character who knows otherwise is Peridot. The thumbnail of this reveal really indicates on what the Earth would have been like, while also seeing the reactions of some of the characters. And to tell you the truth, it took me a while to actually understand the meaning of this scene alone. This is one of the reasons onto why it took a while for me to finally do this marathon to full capacity, because as far as I'm concerned, I was just not ready to do a marathon centering around Steven Universe after my first binge watch, while I managed to do a month dedicated to We Bare Bears, because that show is easy to get into while this show is not. I did keep up with the show with my first binge watch, but keep in mind, it's difficult to follow everything during your first binge watch. I understand that when people make their critiques of this show after the first binge watch is that they're mostly disappointed and they mostly pay attention a lot more than I have. But at the same time, with a different perspective after realizing the events in Season 5 in future, believe me, just because I'm getting back into the show doesn't automatically mean that I hate nearly everything about this show. Because there was a time where I have to admit that people who didn't like the show anymore has really given up on the show and call it bad. I just don't easily jump into conclusions when it comes to other people's perspectives. I may have done that in the past, but at the same time, thinking about myself and thinking my own perspective is literally what's best, because at this point, Steven Universe may be a classic when it comes to Cartoon Network shows. This episode alone really summarizes on the fact that there was a lot more when it comes to making this show, when it comes to a plan. Even though that those plans may be subjectively subverted, it's not like that it's on the same levels as the new Star Wars movies, and you pretty much know what I'm referring to, and for anyone who watches this review, you pretty much know what type of people who critiqued that in this is highly familiar with, but I'm not going to mention his name. At this point, it's not really worth discussing about it. Here's what I feel of what this show is trying to do by being its own thing despite what people think otherwise. It's not trying too physical despite the decisions it makes. I'm fully aware that it could damage the character's credibility, especially with its main character. But whenever I think about these types of material and how that these episodes have aged differently, I'm just stating that a show doesn't automatically get ruined when it comes to these decisions. Granted, I'm fully aware that it has a downfall like every other cartoon and show, but years later when people describe about that, some aspects are true when it comes to other media, but when it comes to shows like Steven Universe, I'm always getting the impression that people just wanted to unleash their hatred towards a show that they're not either giving a chance, and with the people who given up on the show, I can totally understand, but at the same time, it's not really the end of the world. I will admit that people have changed for the good thanks to this show, but at the same time, if this happened in the real world, then it will probably be a huge different story. Even though I'm not going to be revisiting all the episodes that I've talked about in the past, especially A Single Pale Rose, but at the same time, everyone is fully aware that Rose was Pink Diamond all along aside from newcomers, and if you're a newcomer who watch this review for the first time up until I upload more Steven Universe videos later on, it's literally impossible to not spoil anything for how people are really invested in the show that came to an end almost half a decade ago. I'm just saying for a fact that the more I watch this show and the more you tune into it, you need to realize that different point of views doesn't automatically mean it's a bad thing. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've seen so much negativity from this show that I try to understand, especially when it comes to the criticisms, but at the same time, it's a little overwhelming. With Season 2 wrapping up tomorrow, the only thing I would give from this is how that the show will probably surprise me more in a good way, but at the same time, I'm not fully immune when it comes to the bad stuff of what this show has done in later seasons, but it's still questionable if it would happen or not when it comes to the second binge watch. Believe me when I say this, it's mostly difficult to find positive things in the later seasons, but at the same time, it's mainly in the point of view on trying to be a lot more civilized as possible. I'm giving this episode an 8.25 out of 10.